I worked my whole life for that house. Every single brick, every coat of paint, every late night I stayed up budgeting so I could afford the next installment. That was me. That was my sweat. That was my sacrifice. Nobody handed me anything. Not a single dollar. Not a single word of encouragement. I built that house the way I'd built myself. Quietly, stubbornly, and completely alone. And then one Sunday afternoon, my mother called me into the living room, folded her hands in her lap the way she always does when she's about to say something she knows will hurt, and told me I needed to sign my house over to my sister. Just like that, like it was nothing, like I was nothing. I remember the silence that followed. The ceiling fan was turning slowly above us, and I could hear the neighbor's dog barking somewhere outside, and my father was sitting in his armchair not looking at me, which told me everything I needed to know about how long they had been planning this conversation without me. My name is Priya. I am 31 years old. I am a marketing manager at one of the fastest growing tech companies in the city. I have no husband, no safety net. And until that Sunday afternoon, I had one thing I was truly proud of: a 2-bedroom house on Linden Street that I had purchased with 5 years of savings. A modest bank loan, and the kind of discipline that makes people call you boring at parties. And my sister Rena wanted it, not because she needed it, not because she was homeless or struggling or in danger. Rena wanted my house because she liked it better than the apartment she was renting with her husband, and because she had always, her entire life, received whatever she pointed at. Let me tell you about Rena. Rena is 2 years younger than me, and she has been the favorite since the day she was born. I don't say that with bitterness anymore. I said it with bitterness for years and it exhausted me, so now I just say it like a fact. The way you'd say the sky is blue or winter is cold. She was prettier, or at least people always said so. She was louder, funnier, easier to love in the way that loud, funny people always seem easier to love than quiet, determined ones. My parents paid for her college in full. Mine was half funded, and I took out a loan for the rest. When she got married, they threw a wedding that cost more than I made in a year. When I told them I didn't want a big wedding, they seemed relieved, and I had made peace with all of that. I really had, because I had built something they couldn't give or take. I had built a career, a reputation, a home, mine, completely mine. But that Sunday, sitting in my parents' living room with the ceiling fan turning and my father refusing to meet my eyes, my mother explained to me very calmly that Rena and her husband were having financial difficulties, that the apartment they were renting was too small now that Rena was expecting a baby, and that since I lived alone and had no husband and no children, it only made sense for me to let Rena have the house on Linden Street. She said, "Let Rena have," like it was a sweater she was asking me to lend. I asked my mother if she was serious. She said she was very serious. I asked my father if he had anything to say. He cleared his throat and said that family takes care of family. I asked them both what they thought I should do, where I should live, what I should do with the loan I was still paying off, what I should do with 5 years of my life that had gone into that house. My mother said I was young and capable and I would figure it out, and then she said the words that I will hear in my sleep for the rest of my life. She said, "If you refuse to help your sister, then you are not the daughter we raised and you are not welcome in this family." Just like that. Disowned. Erased. For protecting what was mine. I drove home that night in a kind of numb shock. I remember parking in my driveway and sitting in the car for a long time, looking at my house, at the porch light I had chosen myself, at the small garden I had planted along the front path, at the window of the bedroom where I slept every night and woke up every morning and reminded myself that I had done something real in this world. And I thought, they want to take this from me. They actually want to take this from me. I went inside. I made tea. I didn't drink. I sat at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning and I cried the kind of crying that doesn't make any sound. The kind that just leaks out of you like something broken inside. And then I stopped. Because I had a presentation on Monday morning, and I had learned a long time ago that the world does not pause for your grief. I should tell you about my job because this is where the story takes a turn that I still cannot fully believe, even now, even having lived through it. I work at a company called Vantage, and the CEO is a man named Daniel Marsh. Daniel is the kind of CEO that people write magazine articles about: self-made, sharp, allergic to nonsense. The sort of man who can walk into a room and immediately understand everything happening in it without being told. He built Vantage from a 3-person startup into a company with over 400 employees. And he did it by being ruthlessly good at identifying talent and ruthlessly intolerant of anything that wasn't honest, wasn't earned, wasn't real. I'd been at Vantage for 3 years. I'd worked my way up from junior coordinator to marketing manager, and I was quietly, steadily building towards something more. I loved that job the way I loved my house. Not loudly, but deeply and with my whole chest. What I didn't know. That Monday morning when I walked in with red eyes hidden behind concealer and a coffee I was gripping like a lifeline, was that Daniel had been watching my work for months. Not in a creepy way, in the way that good leaders watch people they believe in. I found out later that he had been preparing a performance bonus for me, a significant one, tied to a campaign I had led that had outperformed every projection by nearly 40%. He had planned to announce it at the end of the month. I didn't know any of that. What I did know was that my sister also worked at Vantage. That part I should have mentioned earlier, and I'm telling you now because it matters enormously to everything that happens next. Rena had joined Vantage 8 months ago in a junior role in client services, and she had gotten the job in part because I had referred her. Because I was a good sister. Because even when someone has spent their whole life being handed what you worked for, you still try, you still extend your hand, you still believe that maybe this time things will be different. They were not different. After that Sunday, something shifted in Rena. I think she sensed that I wasn't going to simply give her my house, and that frightened her, or maybe angered her, and she decided to approach the situation from a different angle. She started talking. She talked to colleagues. She told people in the office that I was going through a difficult time and that I had become unstable. She told one person, a woman named Claudia in HR, that I had been behaving erratically at home and making irrational financial decisions. She planted seeds the way she had always planted seeds, so quietly and so prettily that nobody noticed it was her doing the planting. And then she did something I still find breathtaking in its audacity. She went to Daniel Marsh. She requested a private meeting with him, which was unusual for someone at her level but not impossible. And in that meeting, she told him that she was concerned about me. She framed herself as a loving, worried sister. She said that I had become obsessive about a property dispute within the family, that I was letting personal stress affect my professional judgment, and that she felt it was her sisterly duty to flag this before it became a problem for the company. She was trying to get ahead of me. She was trying to make sure that if I went to HR or to management to report what was happening, I would already look like the unstable one, the difficult one, the one whose account of events couldn't be trusted. It was, I will give her this, a sophisticated move. What she didn't account for was Daniel Marsh. Now, I wasn't in that meeting. I didn't know what had happened. I found out about all of this later, piece by piece, the way you find out about most things that happen behind your back, through a combination of a colleague who felt guilty, a HR file I eventually had access to, and Daniel himself, who told me everything when the time came with the kind of calm directness that made me understand exactly why his company had succeeded. What happened in that meeting, as it was described to me, was this. Daniel listened to everything Rena said. He asked her a few questions. And then, because Daniel Marsh is who he is, he began to look into things quietly and on his own. He pulled my performance records. They were, as I said, exceptional. He spoke to 2 colleagues who had worked closely with me on the campaign, and both described me as focused, strategic, and steady under pressure. He did not find a single thread of erratic behavior, instability, or poor judgment, and then he looked at Rena's records. Rena's performance in client services was average at best. She had missed 2 deadlines in her first 6 months, had a noted difficulty with receiving feedback, and had had 1 formal complaint filed against her by a client who felt she had been dismissive during a sensitive account review. And then Daniel, because he was thorough, spoke to Claudia in HR. He wanted to understand what exactly had been said and by whom and when. He was building a picture. I was completely unaware of all of this. I was sitting at my desk every day, doing my work, taking calls, answering emails, running my team, and going home at night to my house on Linden Street, where I was trying very hard not to think about my parents' ultimatum, or my sister's campaign, or the fact that the 2 people who were supposed to love me most in the world were trying to strip away the only thing I had ever truly claimed as my own. My mother called twice that week. I let it go to voicemail both times. My father sent a text that said simply, "Priya, please reconsider." Rena sent nothing, which told me she was confident her other strategy was in motion. The end of the month was approaching. I remember it was a Thursday when Daniel's assistant sent me a calendar invite for a meeting in his office. It was titled Performance Review Q3 Results, and I assumed it was a standard check-in. I wore a blazer. I brought my metrics folder. I was professional and prepared the way I always was. I walked into his office and he was standing by the window with that particular stillness he has. The kind that makes the air in a room feel different. He asked me to sit down. He sat across from me, not behind his desk but in the chair beside it, which I noticed because it was not what I expected. He said, "I want to talk to you about a few things, and I want you to know that this conversation is entirely confidential." And then he told me about Rena's visit. He told me calmly, without drama, exactly what she had said and exactly what he had found when he looked into it. He told me about the performance records, about what Claudia had shared, about the picture he had been quietly building for 2.5 weeks. He did not editorialize. He did not perform outrage on my behalf. He simply laid out the facts the way an honest person does when they respect you enough to give you the truth without decoration. And then he asked me to tell him my side. I don't know why I told him everything. Maybe because I was tired. Maybe because there is something about being in the presence of a person who is genuinely listening, not waiting for their turn to speak, not filtering what you say through what it means for them, but actually listening. That makes you want to be honest in a way you haven't let yourself be honest in a very long time. I told him about my parents and the Sunday afternoon and the ceiling fan and my father not meeting my eyes. I told him about the 5 years of savings and the bank loan and the garden along the front path. I told him about letting it go to voicemail. I told him about sitting at my kitchen table until 2 in the morning. He didn't say anything for a moment when I finished. And then he said, "You built something real. And the people who are supposed to protect you tried to take it. I'm sorry that happened." That was all. 7 words of apology, and they hit me harder than anything anyone had said to me in weeks, because they were true and they were kind and they cost him nothing to say. And then he told me about the bonus. He told me he had been planning it for weeks, tied to the campaign results, and that he was announcing it at the end of the month. He told me the amount, and I will not tell you the amount because it's private, but I will tell you that it was enough to pay off the remainder of my house loan entirely. Enough to make my house, fully and completely and without any remaining obligation, mine. He said he wanted me to know before the announcement because he felt I deserved to walk into that room already knowing. I held it together. Barely. What Daniel told me next was the part I had not anticipated. He said that after everything he had uncovered about Rena's conduct, the deliberate spreading of misinformation about a colleague, the attempt to manipulate senior leadership through false concern, the weaponizing of a family situation to gain professional leverage, he could not in good conscience allow her to continue in her current role without consequence. He said that he would be meeting with HR to discuss her position, and that in the meantime a discretionary performance bonus he had been considering for her team, which Rena had been told she was in line to receive, would not be moving forward in her case. He was not cruel about it, he was not vindictive. He simply said, very plainly, that performance bonuses at Vantage were for people who performed with integrity in their work and in their conduct, and that what Rena had done did not meet that standard. There is something strangely devastating about watching justice happen quietly. I always imagined that if I ever got any, it would feel triumphant, cinematic, loud. But sitting in that office with the afternoon light coming through the window, I just felt incredibly, profoundly tired, and underneath the tiredness, something that took me a while to name. Relief. Not because my sister had suffered, not because my parents would find out and feel ashamed, not for any of the vengeful reasons I might have wanted in my worst moments, just because someone had seen the truth, just because for once the truth had been enough. The bonus was announced at the end of the month as promised. I sat in the all-hands meeting and heard my name and heard the campaign results recited and heard the room respond the way rooms do when something is genuinely deserved. And I thought about my house on Linden Street, and I thought about how I was going to go home that evening and call the bank. Rena left Vantage 3 weeks later. I don't know if she resigned or was asked to go. I didn't ask. I had stopped needing to know the details of things that were no longer my problem. My parents called when they found out about the bonus. My mother's voice was different, smaller somehow than I had ever heard it. She said she hadn't realized. She said Rena had told them things about my job that weren't true. She said she was sorry. I told her I needed time. That's where I am now. I am living in my house on Linden Street. The loan is paid off. The garden along the front path is growing. I wake up every morning in my bedroom and I lie there for a moment before I get up, just feeling the particular silence of a space that belongs entirely to you. A silence that has your name in it. And I think about everything it took to get here and everything that tried to take it away. I don't think I'm the villain of my family's story. I don't think I'm the hero either. I think I'm just a woman who worked for something real and held on to it when holding on was hard, and was lucky enough in one crucial moment to be seen by someone who knew the difference between what was earned and what was simply grabbed. If you're watching this and you're somewhere in the middle of your own version of this story, if someone is pressuring you, if someone is trying to make you doubt what you built, if the people who love you are somehow the same people trying to take from you, I want you to hear this. What you built is real. What you earned is yours. And the truth, when someone actually looks for it, has a way of finding the light. Keep building. Keep holding on. Your house, whatever form it takes, is worth fighting for.